one cannot force the fullness to be seen.
Well, it's much, much worse than that. It's much worse than you can't force it. There is no you.
Yeah.
So this isn't a statement of like there is a you there but it's powerless. So there's a you who can do nothing about the terrible situation that you're now in, having seen emptiness but not fullness. It's not that at all. It's much, much worse than that. You know, there is no you. So there's no question of you being able to do anything or not being able to do anything. You can't be active, you can't be passive, because you is a fiction. You is a fiction.
But experiencing the fullness, there's already in it that there is no more seeking necessary.
Yes.
Because it's everything is as it is.
Yeah. That's that's what puts an end to the seeking energy. So that despair I was talking about before is like in awakening, it's seen that there is nothing this can do because this doesn't exist, but that seeking energy is still there. That's what causes the despair. I still feel there's something lacking in me, but I now know there's nothing that this can do to heal that wound, if you like, or to heal that lack. So it's the seeing the fullness that puts an end to that. After the seeing of fullness, I can't say no more despair, because anything can happen and despair can arise from all sorts of things, but no more of the despair that I've been talking about. No more of the despair of feeling helpless but unfulfilled. That ends. Yeah. And something else in what you said, I can't remember what it was, reminded me to also say, you see, this, even if we talk about a split second of seeing emptiness, which may or may not happen, it doesn't have to happen, but if it does, what a point to make maybe over and over again perhaps, is that what we're talking about there is a huge energy shift. It's a huge energy release. It's not just like, oh, you know, something happens, you know, the mind's running, let's say. There isn't such a thing as a mind, but let's accept that there is for the moment. So the mind's running, and then for a split second that stops, and then the mind starts again, and there's some realisation. It's not simply that. There's a big energy shift. Well, there doesn't have to be, but there often is. And so what happens after that, even though the person may be back and even though the person may be feeling despair, is there can be this incredible automatic realignment of all sorts of aspects of this, what I sometimes call this psychophysical system. All sorts of things can just change very, very, very quickly because of this energy release. All sorts of things that seemed like a complete mystery before can suddenly become totally obvious. Like, what the hell are mystics talking about? I mean, trying to understand. I mean, no mystic is ever saying anything worth listening to other than there is no self. The only thing that a mystic knows is there is no self. If a mystic talks about anything else, they're as likely to be talking nonsense as anyone else, or as likely to be talking sense. But there's nothing special about mystics in terms of their knowledge or information about the world in any way whatsoever, other than a mystic sees that there is no self. So it's hardly surprising that those of us for whom there's always seemed to be a self can't understand what mystics are getting at. What the hell does all these mystical sayings? It's so puzzling, it's paradoxical. It's one of the reasons Zen can be so, infuriating and so forth. So all of these mystical sayings can suddenly go, suddenly it's clear. It's clear what they mean. You know, you take somebody like, I don't know quotations from that many mystics, so I tend to always quote the same ones. So one of my favourite ones, Marguerite Poiret, says something like, I'm probably paraphrasing, but until I see that I am nothing, I cannot see that I am all. or until I see that I am nothing, I cannot see that I am everything. What the hell does that mean? Excuse me? What? Until I see that I am nothing, I cannot see that I am everything. Well, if ever I've heard nonsense in my life, it's that. And then suddenly, just the seeing of emptiness, split second, you know exactly. Well, you don't know it, but it is known. It may be known immediately or in a very short time. And that's what she means. That's what she's getting at. Of course. Of course, I'm nothing. It's obvious I'm nothing. And at that point, you might then have to take on trust the until I see I'm nothing, I cannot know that I'm everything. And then, if this is seen to be full as well as empty, then suddenly there's an understanding of that bit as well. And of course, it's obvious. I am both nothing and everything. And I can't know that I'm everything until I know that I'm nothing. It's just absolutely obvious. And all the mind will probably tend to, mystics are very kind of difficult people. They talk in paradoxes, they talk in riddles. There's this Zen thing of being very challenging, trying to kind of shock people out of their accustomed, comfortable mental spaces so that they suddenly see life anew. And that's why mystics are so difficult and so forth. But quite often, the mystic isn't being difficult at all. The mystic is simply putting in the most simple words they can what's seen. It only seems like a paradox because it's a person who's trying to interpret it. That's all. So if you take very famous, very well-known phrase, the title of Nisargadatta's book, one of the most famous books in the non-duality canon, I am that. I don't know whether that sounds simple or difficult, or whether we puzzle over it, or whether it seems paradoxical or mystical or whatever. But if this is seen, then it's seen instantly what he means by that. There's nothing paradoxical about it, there's nothing metaphorical about it, it isn't an image, it is simply his way of stating as simply and as literally as he can what's seen. Because what is seen is I and that are the same thing. There is no distinction. This awareness may appear to be located here in what I laughingly call sometimes my body-mind, but it isn't. That's just a kind of illusion or appearance created by separation. Awareness is not located here. Awareness is everywhere and therefore nowhere. Because awareness is everywhere, the word everywhere loses its meaning. Because awareness is everywhere, there can't be an everywhere. Because everywhere is created by the sense that awareness is over here and there's a wall somewhere else. When it's seen that the wall and this is equally aware, there's only one space. I'm aware how paradoxical that phrase is as I use it, but I can't think of a different phrase. So here and there collapse. This and that collapse. I, here, and that wall over there, collapse. So Nisargadatta isn't being clever, he's not being paradoxical, he's not being Zen-like, he's just giving a literal description of what's seen. I and that are the same thing. I am that. Zen, before, I'm going to use the word enlightenment, I don't like it, but it's a Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, draw water. After enlightenment, chop wood, draw water. What the hell does that mean? Well, it's bleeding obvious what it means if we just... It's bleeding obvious what it means when it becomes bleeding obvious. What it means is no difference. No difference. Forget all the magical fairy stories that we might have heard, believed, or even created for ourselves about this marvellous, wonderful thing called enlightenment. What's Zen got to say about that? No difference. Before enlightenment, it's this. After enlightenment, it's this. We can substitute any activity, phrase, emotion, feeling, thought you like for chop wood. It doesn't make any difference. You know, before enlightenment, feed the cat. After enlightenment, feed the cat. This is so ordinary. So what I was trying to say is that even a split second of seeing this can result in a huge realignment of what is going on in what might seem to be a unique psychophysical system, a unique energy system that we call a person or a human being or whatever.
But it can also happen that there is a split second and then it goes again. So that there can be a second of seeing that all is one, and then it can.
That's sort of way what I'm
and all
talking
the
about.
neurotic mechanisms can come back.
Or can come back even more strongly than before, can come back energized. But that's what I'm talking about, that even if there's just a split second, it does tend to cause a major realignment of what's going on in what seems to be this individual psychophysical system in terms of what's perceived mentally, what's understood, what might go on in the body. Yeah.
Yes, and so it may also be, depending on the psychophysical system, what happens. Some say that you need a good and strong nervous system in order to become enlightened.
Yes, well now we're going off down a different path now, where we are trying, it's very tempting to do this, it's very natural for the mind, where in some way or other we want to assign causation. We want cause and effect, so there are all sorts of roads we could go down here. We could go down the road of rituals to God, or prayer, or spiritual work, or psychotherapy, or in this case we're going down the road of perhaps you need a strong psychophysical system, whatever that means, perhaps free of neuroses. It's kind of quite natural and quite obvious why the mind wants to assign cause and effect. The trouble is that none of it applies here. That's why we say, do what you like. We don't say relax because relaxation will bring about the seeing of this. We say relax because by and large relaxation's pleasanter than non-relaxation. Because we have to say something.
If it's not possible to relax, you can want it as much as you want.
Absolutely. So of course even the suggestion to relax is utterly absurd. Of course, because relaxation takes place or it does not take place. So to say relax is just as absurd as to say pray to God, or clear your chakras, or you need to develop a strong psycho-emotional system. Therapy might help with that. But it's natural for the mind to look for causation in this. Of course it is. And it's very frustrating when causation is seen to fall apart. Very frustrating indeed. Yeah. That's why this person who comes to my talks in London, I quoted before, that's why he said, it's so unfair. Because it's that lack of causation.
But that's also good, because if there would be causation, you could reach it, you could earn it, and that's
and then the world would be a better place.
No, that would be cruel. You think if you can earn it, you also can lose it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That would it would be conditioned.
But this isn't really, not a message, this is a communication. This is a good communication for lazy people.
No, I,
Yeah. But you
because
see, and there's a lot of stuff in the spiritual stories about that. You know, I mean, I was referring to earlier, I followed a guru with deep love and devotion and so forth. All these stories about the higher you get, it's a path, and the higher you get up the path, the more precipitous your fall will be if you slip off the path. So the closer you get, the more you can bugger it up. Yeah, it's sort of tough. It's tough. There's a lot of very, very tough thinking and lots of punishment in a way. And if you look at some of the kind of modern Western guru figures, and I'm not going to name names because we're being filmed, it's quite obvious that, you know, you gather a group of devotees around you who believe in this and so forth, and it gives you a reason, an excuse, a situation, whatever you want to say, in which your psychopathic streak can come out immensely. So some of the kind of modern Western gurus turn into the most unbelievable psychopathic kind of torturers, really, of their followers. And it's precisely because of that, yeah, if you can do something about it, you can also mess it up. So watch out. Yeah. No, this is an afternoon for lazy, idle, sort of morally lax. I mean, you don't have to be morally lax, but just kind of, you know. William Blake, do you like William Blake over here? You know what he said? Damn braces, bless relaxes. I mean, by braces, I don't think he was literally meaning what holds your trousers up. He was just meaning anything that keeps you tight and stressed, you know. Damn anything that makes you like that, and bless anything that relaxes you.
What do you say where all the myths of liberation have their origin?
Myths.
Myths.
Well, probably that one word we were talking about so much earlier, hope. Probably. But we are clearly storytelling animals, storytelling beings, which is to say myth-making beings. And I mean, you know, there are clearly evolutionary reasons for that. You know, if we sort of look into evolutionary psychology, it is clearly beneficial to our survival. Firstly, that we note, I mean, the beginning of stories is to notice patterns, if you like, we could say patterns in nature. It clearly has enormous survival value to notice patterns in nature. So if there ever were species of humans who didn't notice patterns in nature, they certainly died out very quickly. They wouldn't have bred very successfully. So it's that thing of the grasses move, right? Is that the random movement of the wind, or is that the patterned movement of a saber-toothed tiger? Right? So the humans that were not able to detect the pattern from the random at all died out pretty quickly. They were all eaten by saber-toothed tigers before they could have many children, and their children were eaten before they grew up. Right? It's from an evolutionary point of view, it's advantageous to see more patterns than there are rather than fewer patterns than there are. So, in other words, if we over-interpret the world as patterns, that doesn't matter, we still survive. But if we under-interpret the world as patterns, then we don't survive. So in other words, the wind moves the grass. If we make the mistake of seeing a tiger there when it's actually the wind, that's what evolutionary psychologists call a trivial mistake, or a non-fatal mistake. It doesn't matter. We see the tiger that's not really there, we run away, we've just wasted a little bit of energy. But if we go the other way and we see it as a random pattern, a random movement, when actually it's the pattern of a saber-toothed tiger, then that's what evolutionary psychologists might call a fatal mistake, or a non-trivial error, because then we get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. So it's actually of an advantage from a survival point of view that we oversee patterns. We see patterns where there are none, rather than the other way around. as it were. So out of these patterns, then we begin to create stories. You see, and perhaps these stories are about the great spirit of the tiger, the saber-toothed tiger. You know, and we saw the saber-toothed tiger in the grasses yesterday, and then it vanished because the saber-toothed tiger spirit wasn't ready to pounce, but actually it was just the wind. So we start making up myths and stories. And then the other part of this, of course, is that in a pre-scientific age, we don't know what the hell's going on, and we want to know what the hell's going on, so we make up stories about it. I mean, the crops failed. For God's sake, the crops failed. We have no understanding of weather patterns, no understanding of soil chemistry, no understanding of bacteria or plagues of lotus whatsoever. You know, we're pre-scientific, but most of our existence we've been pre-scientific. But the crops have failed. Not only do we want to understand that, much more importantly, we want to make sure they don't fail next season. Well, we've heard a rumour that over the mountain on the other side of the valley, when the crops failed, they took 3 of their virgin daughters and they sacrificed them and they spread their blood onto the land. And the next season, do you know what happened? The crops grew. Well, it's worth a try, don't you think? There's only 3 of our virgin daughters. Come on, you know, it's worth a try. You see, so out of this, all sorts of myths begin to grow up, and all sorts of practices to do with human sacrifice and the Fisher King, and you know, human blood, a blood sacrifice. Why did the crops fail? Basically because the gods were angry with us. We're not sure why they're angry, but we think it's probably because we didn't appease them with human blood. So, you know, so now you've got patterns and myths and stories, and always hope, the hope that the crops won't fail next year like they failed last year. And all of this goes on and on and on and on and on until somebody, sometime around about the time of, I don't know what, the Renaissance, a little bit afterwards, decided to invent science. And suddenly we could kind of understand stuff that we didn't understand before, so we didn't have to sacrifice to the gods anymore and pray to them. But unfortunately by then it had all got so deeply into our psyche and our culture that we couldn't give it up. So here we are today, several hundred years after the invention of science, and we're still basically sacrificing virgins to the gods. I mean, most of us, to be honest, not literally, but nevertheless the spirit of that goes on. You know, there are gods up there. There's either gods up there or a god up there that somehow needs to be both pleased and appeased. It's just that we don't tend to do it with the blood sacrifices anymore, not the human blood sacrifice.
We do it with taxes now.
What?
We do it with taxes now.
Well, yeah, but also pursuing the blood sacrifice. Of course, you know, if you happen to be a member of the Catholic Church, you are still doing it with a blood sacrifice. It's just not a literal blood sacrifice. But when you take communion and the priest does his blessing, that wine literally turns into the blood of Jesus. So, how many Catholics are there? 1 billion or more? So 1 billion? Many of whom are Western educated, many of whom probably have A-levels in physics and chemistry and biology, and a good few of them probably have degrees and postgraduate doctorates in physics and chemistry and biology, are still performing this blood sacrifice every Sunday. The only difference is that they're not doing it literally. Well, they are doing it literally. They are doing it literally. They're not doing it by actually cutting the throats of virgins. But every Sunday, millions upon millions of Catholics perform an actual, literal blood sacrifice. The wine actually, literally transubstantiates into the blood of Jesus. Isn't that amazing? I'm not quite sure what kind of word to follow after the amazing,
but even more amazing is for what they do it. It's not for survival. It's not for. It's for, what is it called? Redemption.
Please God. redeem yourself. That's kind of what I meant when I said unfortunately. It's a bit unfortunate that by the time science came along, I mean science was a bit laggardly, and by the time science came along, this stuff had got into our kind of collective psyche so deeply that apparently it is impossible to erase it from some people, but from many people. It's just too deep. It's like a mental virus, isn't it?
It's in the genes.
I don't know if it's in the genes. That would be an interesting... who knows? You know, I mean, you know, genetics is kind of advancing in unexpected ways, so who knows? I mean, the Lamarckians are beginning to make a comeback. You know, it used to be absolutely Lamarck's nonsense. There's no way in which the genes can be affected or influenced in any way by, like, you know, kind of conditions and circumstances. Well, they're beginning to change their mind about that, so who knows? Who knows? Maybe there are Catholic genes and Protestant genes and atheist genes. Maybe. Yeah. Wouldn't that be wonderful if Catholicism and atheism were both in our DNA?
Science is the myth of tomorrow.
I'm not going to pick that one up and run with it. Just to let that one lie on. Unlike religion, I would just say that science is self-correcting. There's a little difference there. And another difference is that unlike religion, it's evidence-based. Sometimes, at least, it's evidence-based.
It's really crazy, the myth one is meeting in life and on a spiritual path. For example, before the break, I was turning very tired and I felt like lying down and sleeping, and I was also quite relaxed, and I thought, oh, I want to sleep now, and I don't know. And then that little thought came up, my mind is tricky and is wanting to avoid to listen to you. I have the feeling it's too complicated, yet I cannot really change it.
Or an alternative story, the Shakti energy pouring forth from this seat is relaxing you to such an extent. If you go with it and go deeper and deeper and deeper, this Shakti energy will purify your chakras. This is a good example of what stories do, because there we have two possible stories, both leading in exactly the opposite direction. Stay awake and pay attention, or you won't become enlightened.
Yes.
Relax and go with the flow, or you won't become enlightened. And of course, both of them are simply stories.
Yeah.
And both of them we could probably build an entire spiritual school on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nevertheless, I feel like saying, repeating as I said earlier, relaxation is next to Buddhahood right now. So I'm probably, you could listen to that and go with the relaxation, or you could just think, well, actually relaxation's nicer than stress. Go with it for that reason.
Sometimes earlier, years ago, I remember you often said something like, you don't need to know, or what is the need to know everything, and that made me also kind of relax. Sometimes you said something like, the mystic only knows one thing, that there's no I. He doesn't know what comes after death, or what is the origin of mankind, or things like that. This is the tension, I think, that is created, this knowledge, this wanting to know. For me, this thing with the enlightenment and everything also always had to do with trying to understand, finding out what it is, and it's nonsense, and there's no way of finding out.
Yeah. That's one of the things that can arise from maybe even a split second of seeing, is that recognition of that there so much is unknowable, almost everything's unknowable. And so the speculate, and again talking about relaxation, that can come about partly simply because the endless speculation tends to end. I know that doesn't make sense. The almost endless speculation comes to an end. So it's like speculation about death ends, not because the mystic has access to privileged information, but because the mystic sees that there's no possibility of an answer. So the energy of questioning ends. And there's a well-known Zen story about that. I know I quote endlessly, but let me quote it once more. You know, the student who goes to the Zen master and says, "Now tell me, master, what happens after death?" And the Zen master just shrugs his shoulders and says, "I don't know." And the Zen student is very shocked and feels very, very disappointed and let down, and says, but you're a Zen master." And the master says, "Yes, but I'm not as dead as Zen master." So time to know about death when we're a dead Zen master. So that's kind of what helps to bring about a more relaxed way of being, when that speculation falls away, not because the questions are answered, but because they're seen to be unanswerable.